right, it's 1:30. I'll call the meeting to order and recognize that we have a quorum present. First of all, Senators Witherspoon and Jackson, I guess we're short on chairs around the table now for spacing purposes, but there are some chairs. You're fine to sit where you are, but there are some chairs that are on the sides too, and I think those are the only two that are not up at a designated seat. But let me also, before we get started, recognize Senator Williams, Bart Williams. He's a new member to our committee this year, and just as most of you know, elected in the off season and from the Starkville area, and glad to have him on board with Appropriations. And I'll say this about Senator Williams: he's been to at least 4 or 5 subcommittees so far, so he's learning from the ground up. And I know how difficult, having been on Appropriations my entire time here, I know how difficult it is to start to learn this stuff. And I'm glad to have Senator Williams jumping in to learn as much as he can at the ground level, which is the subcommittee meetings, as most of you know, because that's where you get more detail on each of the agency's budgets. So glad to have him on board. And of course, our new vice chair, Senator Polk. Senator Wiggins left me hanging here, but Senator Polk, glad to have you on board as vice chair. And appreciate all the work that all of you are doing on your subcommittees at this time, because I know there's a lot going on. All right, on our agenda today, first bill is House Bill 69. This deals with changes to language related to the State Personnel Board requirements for the VA. And as most of you know, the VA is having some difficulty keeping a lot of their staff, particularly those in the healthcare arena, and also some maintenance and operations folks. We did make a slight change to the bill that had been sent to us from the House. We included the words, if you look on lines 127 and following, we put employees excluding administrative employees. So administrators can't be exempted from this. This is only for the healthcare workers and those that are doing maintenance in the facilities. Also, if you go back to lines 44, starting on line 45, excuse me. Is that the right place? Yes, starting on line 45, I'd like to include this change as well. Strike through State Personal Service Contract Review Board and replace that with the Public Procurement Review Board. These are updates on updating language, so we're conforming with existing statutes. That's all this is. And then on the following line where it says 25-9-120 open paren 3, that will be 27-104-7. And then skipping down to line 47 where it says $100,000, that should be $75,000. And finally, on line 50, at the very end of the line, starting with State Personal Service Contract, et cetera, through the end of that sentence, it should be Public Procurement Review Board as required by law. This is just conforming language. This does not change anything. It's just updating old, outdated statutes to conform with existing law. So, I'm sorry, we're on the proposed committee sub. So, having heard those corrections and changes, does anybody have any questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion. The motion is titled Sufficient Pass, Strike All. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. That bill will be reported. Now moving on to Senate Bill 2001 on our agenda, number 2 today. I will call on Senator DeBar to explain the measure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senate Bill 2001 is the teacher pay raise bill. It's the same bill that we passed out of committee and off the floor last year. And what it does is it gives a $1,000 pay raise to teachers and teacher assistants, except for those teachers that have 0 to 3 years of experience. Their pay raise will be $1,110, therefore raising the starting pay to $37,000. This will cost approximately $51 million off the latest numbers we've got from Department of Education. And as we discussed last year, our teachers definitely deserve it now more than ever with what they've been facing this last year under COVID. We also recognize that the pay needs to be increased even more than this, but working within our budgetary confines with other agencies that need money, This is a good first step, and hopefully it'll be one of a few more pay raises over the next couple of years. So with that, I'll yield for any questions.
Question, Senator Turner Ford.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator DeBar, with the raise that's being proposed in this measure, where will that place us in terms of the southeastern average in teacher pay?
Currently, I think Arkansas is the only state below us. It'll move us higher in pay, but I don't think it's going to move us much higher in the list for SREB for the southeastern average.
What is that amount? What is the southeastern average?
Report came out this year that for a first-year teacher, it's approximately $35,000. For a teacher in their 15th year, it's about $45,000. And for a teacher in their 35th year, it's about $68,000. And what a recent study has indicated is that in Mississippi, our teacher pay for our newer teachers, those that have not reached 30 years or so, is not as high as the rest of the southeastern average. But our teachers that have made it that long, that made it to 35 years, they're actually in the top 25% of our average. So what I would like to do this summer is try to figure out a way and study this so we can put more money into our teachers that are younger, newer, starting out, so we can keep them longer. It'll give us more experience. It'll increase the teacher pay. It'll increase our ranking in the southeastern average. But the main thing is the more teachers we have making more money, it's going to help our PERS retirement. And so that's something we've looked at and discussed looking at and studying this summer.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Senator Turner Ford. Are there other questions? Senator Polk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman DeBar, you gave us a total number that raise will cost the state of Mississippi, 50-some-odd million.
51 million.
50 million.
Yeah.
Now, I assume that number came from the Mississippi Department of Education.
It did.
Can we assume that number has been ciphered correctly, and that will be the number?
That's the number they provided us. At this point, we're relying on them to provide us numbers. As you recall, we don't want to do another deficit appropriation that we did, I think it was last year. I've made that very clear to them.
Good.
But working with our LBO and Corbin here, I think our number is solid, but we should get an update here in the next week or two as well.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Polk. Are there other questions? Senator Turner Ford.
I don't have a question, Mr. Chair, but I would like to be recognized for a motion at the appropriate time.
Okay, hold on just a moment. Senator Moran, do you have a question?
Just kind of a comment to Chairman DeBar and to everyone. Looking at the pay scale, it's pretty evident that talking about our young teachers and wanting to keep them for 20, 30, 40 years or whatever, how they want to stay, as they progress in their education, increasing their from A to AA, AAA, especially a national teacher certificate, that money begins to increase significantly in yearly salary. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, and would put them in a much better position, especially as the southeastern average, because at this point a national is $6,000 a year. That's $500 a month, and that's a significant increase. A tremendous amount of work. My wife spent many a night at the dining room table, papers scattered everywhere, working on that, but she stayed with it till she got it, and it made a tremendous difference in her attitude and her thoughts of retiring one day. So I encourage, and I tell the teachers this all the time, born into a family of educators. My mom and dad were retired school teachers. I had 3 siblings that were school teachers. I have my degree to teach, just chose not to do that. But if you pursue that and get the higher education, get your certificates higher, and with the nationals, you can then begin to see the rewards of it as you stay in the profession longer, and hopefully we'll keep these young teachers for a long time. just wanted to make that statement. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Moran. Other questions before I recognize Senator Turner Ford? Senator, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to offer some language by way of an amendment. I would say somewhere between paragraph, line 58, it mentions it's the intent of the legislature, and it goes on to state regarding funds. I would like language added to state that it is the intent of the legislature to devise a plan to increase teacher salaries to the southeastern average within the next 5 years. I believe it can be inserted in line 65, which would be at the end of the paragraph. If not 65, it's 63.
Is the motion that we would strike through the beginning of line 58 and say that it is the intent of the legislature to increase the salary of teachers to the southeastern average in 5 years?
Not to strike any language, but to add language at the end of that sentence. I think, and that sentence ends at line 63.
All right. Senator Turner Ford, let me ask a question about that before I turn it over to the members of the committee. Is Senator DeBar mentioned the hopes in the Education Committee, I know he brought it up in more detail, the hopes of having some conferences in the off-season to discuss this very thing, along with a few other issues that are related. I'm going to let him talk about that in a moment. The question I've got is, we may be better than the southeastern average as it relates to certain level of teachers. We may be worse with other levels. I'm afraid that the vagueness of the language could leave us going backwards or stale on some areas without it going forward. Do you think it'd be better to allow them to have this off-season study to look at that? Certainly, I think that's the intent of myself and everybody else, without maybe hamstringing the committee with or the group that's going to be looking at that by putting them into a too confined area.
I understand your question, but I don't agree with it. And I think what I would like to see, and I said 5 years, and I believe I need to change it. I think we need to make sure that we have some definitive language to direct whoever has the authority to study this and provide numbers to us to go on and do something immediately or as quickly as possible if it's in the off season. So I would like to change or modify my motion and withdraw that 5-year language to that they would just devise a plan to increase the salaries to the southeastern average within the next year.
Senator DeBar, do you want to address the motion?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I certainly appreciate the amendment. It is my commitment or my desire to raise the pay for teachers to the southeastern average. I'm concerned about the cost of such a thing, considering all the other issues with different agencies we have, from corrections to Medicaid to child support with DHS. Like I said, we definitely intend to study the teacher pay this summer, along with other issues as well. And it is a priority of the committee, Education Committee, as well, Lieutenant Governor, as evident by the fact that this is the first bill 2 years in a row that has been assigned and referred. So I just think it might hamstring the committee and the legislature if we put a time frame on it without any other further language as far as a fiscal note or plan in place. And so while I agree with Senator Turner Ford, your desire to raise pay, as I think we all do, I would oppose the amendment at this time.
Senator Wiggins, you have a question?
Yes, one procedural for the chair. If this amendment passes and this is double referred, this means this goes back to education?
It would go back to education, correct?
And then my question is for Ms. Turner Ford. Based on what how the amendment's been stated, you know, sounds like that is pigeonholing the legislature. What if, you know, we have another pandemic next year and we're out money? We had to make drastic cuts last year. So your amendment doesn't sound like that's going to address anything, and all the funds are subject to what our revenue is.
If I'm,
Senator Turner Ford, you recognized.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. The purpose of the amendment is to devise a plan, and I'm not requesting that we have teacher pay increase to the southeastern average within the next year, but I think that we need to have a definitive plan to work towards that, and that's the purpose of the amendment.
You
Go
done?
ahead. No, go ahead.
Let me, well, I'll wait. Senator Hill, you have a question?
Actually, just a comment or on what the amendment would do, and I don't have any problem with what the meat of the amendment is, but I would just suggest that maybe we could make that amendment on the floor rather than having it sent back to education. And that would give us some time to get the wording together. That's just a suggestion.
Right now, the amendment's on the floor. Now, it's up to Senator Turner Ford as to whether or not she would, if she wants to go forward with it, that's fine, or if she wants to withdraw it, but that's her decision. I do want to think about this in this process. The idea of a study committee, which I understand is going to take place this summer anyway, or hopefully this summer, I think it needs to, in my opinion, I like the idea. I think the intent of trying to get to a southeastern average, or maybe even above southeastern average, would be good. I also think part of what needs to happen is all cards need to be on the table, because we may fund things in Mississippi that other states don't. We may have a funding formula like MAEP that other states don't have exactly. We may have more money in VOTEC that other states don't have. We may have less money in teacher assistance than other states do. It's a complicated, when you start dealing with the education budget, I think that's, unfortunately, too many people look at two things, MAEP and teacher pay. And they're both very important things for our state's education, but I do think that sometimes everybody forgets about the other things. I look at this budget as a whole, the education budget, and I see a lot of things in there that I think we're doing in Mississippi that other states aren't, but we're probably not doing as much as some other states are. So acknowledging that the intent of what the motion is, I am concerned the way that it's worded right now, or that it's really in this bill as opposed to being a separate study committee bill, if there is one, that would put all cards on the table to look at everything. Because I think there's some things I heard Senator DeBar mention at the Education Committee that I hadn't even thought about that ought to be looked at during the summer. So that's the concern. I don't want us to be myopic in the view of how we're going to look at education pay. I want it to be broad and sweeping.
So if I may, I move to withdraw my amendment.
Okay, Senator Turner Ford, the motion has been withdrawn. Are there other questions on the proposal that's in front of you, the bill for the teacher pay raise? Hearing none.
Title sufficient, do pass.
The motion is title sufficient, do pass. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. That bill will be reported. I'll entertain a motion to rise and report. So moved. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Thank you very much.